7 years of silence, one act of defiance. No one expected the moment to go viral. A royal child poised, polished, raised under centuries of protocol did something completely unscripted on live television. And the world couldn't stop watching. But what no one saw was what led to it, or what followed. Because just off camera, standing in the shadows like she always had, was a woman named Eliza. Not a royal, not a celebrity, just a bodyguard with a reputation for being invisible until the day she wasn't. And days later, she was gone, quietly removed. No announcement, no thank you, no trace. So what happened between Princess Charlotte and the woman sworn to protect her? And why did one split-second decision on that stage leave a girl forever changed and a woman erased from history? This is the story of loyalty, rebellion, and the price of protecting a princess. In the world's eye, she is the picture of grace, every movement measured, every smile rehearsed. A little princess born into centuries of tradition, her every heartbeat documented for posterity. On public stages, Charlotte is the embodiment of royal decorum. Her laughter is polite, her tears discreetly wiped away. Yet behind the curated headlines and sunlit photos lies a different story, a life lived under glass. Cut to a close-up, Charlotte's eyes, searching. Growing up in the gilded cage of royalty means that even childhood becomes performance. Playdates are scheduled. Friendships are filtered through palace walls. Every slip of innocence risks becoming tomorrow's tabloid fodder. For a young girl, the weight of expectation is heavier than any crown. Enter Eliza Ward, black and white still of Eliza in uniform. A former Special Forces operative turned royal protection officer, Eliza is trained to disappear into the background. Tall, disciplined, with a gaze that misses nothing, she is the fortress around the princess. Yet beneath that steely exterior beats a heart shaped by compassion. She knows that guarding Charlotte means more than shielding her from harm, it means preserving her humanity. Bodyguards in royal life are paradoxes, essential yet unseen. They stand at the very edge of every public appearance, scanning crowds, diffusing threats, yet vanishing from every published image. Their success is measured in invisibility, and Eliza Ward was the best. Slow dolly shot of Eliza walking alongside Charlotte through palace gardens. She guided Charlotte through the endless choreographed waves and curtsies. She whispered reminders to tuck a handkerchief, to breathe before stepping into the spotlight. In moments of doubt, Mary's intonation stumbles or a shy glance toward an unfamiliar camera, Eliza's steady presence was the anchor, but the bond between protector and protected ran deeper than protocol. Eliza saw Charlotte's unguarded moments, the frustrated stomp when another speech dragged on, the fleeting smile at a garden butterfly, the tear caught in an eyelash before a crowd. She understood that to guard a princess meant also to guard a child's right to simply be a child, and in that hidden world, under the watchful eyes of security monitors and palace staff, an invisible love was born, a shared solace in a life devoid of privacy, a reminder that even in the grandest halls, two women could find a moment of genuine humanity. Until everything changed. Cue tense music, because growing up under glass exacts a price, and no one paid it harder than these twash. Didn't speak at first, just watched, observed, measured the room with the kind of caution only a royal child learns so young. She had already learned that the world watched her differently, that even her fear was something to be photographed. But then in walked Eliza. Curtsy, no baby talk, just a calm, steady voice. Morning, Miss Charlotte. I'm here to keep you safe, that's all. The little girl blinked, nodded once, and didn't let go of her hand for the rest of the day. That was how it started. Eliza Ward didn't come from royal circles. She wasn't polished or posh. She was ex-military, trained in Kabul, hardened in silence. But underneath that armor was a rare tenderness. And from the moment she met Charlotte, something shifted. Over the years, Eliza became more than just a bodyguard. She was the calm voice before a terrifying public engagement. The one who whispered, just pretend they're statues, before Charlotte's first solo wave. She taught her how to breathe through panic, how to tighten a fist and throw a punch just right, not because a princess should fight, but because sometimes knowing you can makes all the difference. Flashback montage. Charlotte, in oversized gloves, giggling in a hidden wing of the palace gym. A tear-streaked face buried in Eliza's coat before an Easter mass. The two of them in an old London bookstore, flipping through dog-eared fairy tales, the princess in a hoodie to stay unnoticed. Eliza gave Charlotte something she didn't get anywhere else. Safety without performance. Among palace staff, she earned a quiet nickname, the Silent Shadow, always near, never loud, and always watching, especially when others weren't. But not everyone was comfortable with how close they became. Whispers began in staff meetings that Eliza had overstepped her role, that boundaries were blurring, that a bodyguard should protect, not parent. Security detail rotations were shuffled. Protocols suddenly tightened. Eliza was quietly reassigned to other duties, never for long, but just enough to send a message. Yet every time she returned, Charlotte lit up. She'd spot Eliza across the room and run to her, arms flung wide. No curtsies, no ceremony, just real joy, a rarity in royal life. And Eliza? She never said a word about the whispers, never defended herself. She simply did her job and loved the child she'd sworn to protect. But the palace is a place of structure, of hierarchy, and emotion, especially emotion between staff and royals, is a threat to that order. So the walls began to close in, and the moment was coming. The one no one could take back. It started with a sound, barely more than a hum. Most wouldn't have noticed it, a faint mechanical whir, like a bee flying off key. But Eliza noticed. Cut to, her eyes narrowing, the way she froze mid-step, her hand subtly sliding to her earpiece. Above the treetops, a drone, but not a child's toy. This one was heavier, louder, modified, carrying something that didn't look standard. Eliza acted fast. Flash montage, a sharp command into her mic. Her arm out, pushing Charlotte gently behind a rock. A sprint forward, gravel flying, and then, a man in the trees, remote in hand, civilian clothes, but something off in his stance, too stiff, too prepared. She didn't hesitate. She disarmed him, dropped him, and restrained him in under 15 seconds. By the time secondary security arrived, the drone had been recovered and the man detained. No injuries, no panic, no scene, textbook protection. But that night, there was no commendation, no thank you. Instead, an emergency meeting in the drawing room. Lord Hensley, the royal security liaison and notorious traditionalist, was furious. You acted without authorization, he hissed. You endangered the optics of the royal image. That's not your call to make. Voiceover. To Eliza, it was simple. There was a potential threat to the princess. She neutralized it. That's the job. But to the palace, the job is perception. And Eliza had overstepped. Again, whispers turned into official reprimands. A report was filed. Meetings were held behind closed doors. And days later, she was gone. No formal announcement. No press release. Just removed. Charlotte wasn't even told. She came downstairs one morning, asking where Eliza was, and was met with tight lips and vague phrases. She's on leave. It's being handled. Don't worry about that, darling. But Charlotte did worry. She searched the corridors, checked the gym, the bookstore, the bench they used to sit on in the gardens. Empty. Always empty. And then a slip. A careless comment from a junior aide. Well, after Eliza's dismissal. Dismissal? Voiceover. Charlotte didn't cry. Not then. But something inside her cracked. The girl who had trusted the palace to keep her world whole suddenly saw the cracks in the golden walls. She demanded to see Eliza. There was no protocol for that, but she insisted. They met one final time. At the staff gate. No cameras. No supervision. Seen Charlotte in a sweater, arms crossed tightly. Eliza in civilian clothes, no badge, no earpiece, just tired eyes. They didn't say much. They didn't have to. You didn't say goodbye, Charlotte whispered. I wasn't allowed, Eliza replied. You promised you'd never leave. I promised. I'd keep you safe. And I did. They hugged. Not like royal and protector. Like family. And then, Eliza was gone. No forwarding address. No explanation. Just silence. Voiceover. The kind of silence that speaks louder than a scandal. The kind that says, you got too close. You forgot your place. You made her human, and that's the one thing they can't protect. The shadow had been. She wrote the first letter the night Eliza left. Just 2 lines. I miss you. Are you safe? By the end of the week, there were 10, then 30, then dozens, folded and sealed. They were tucked into a showbox under her bed, each one a whisper. Into the void. No address. No return. Just hope. Inked carefully in looping handwriting, because no one would give her answers. Not her mother, not the aides, not the guards who now followed her with stiff expressions and emotionless eyes. The new security detail did their job. They were punctual, sharp, obedient, but they didn't see her. They didn't notice when her fingers clenched with anxiety before a speech. Didn't soften their steps when she cried quietly in the carriage. Didn't laugh when she stumbled through rehearsals and made up silly words. They called her ma'am, never Lottie. Never kiddo. Eliza was gone. And with her, the last place Charlotte had felt safe. Voiceover. Grief turned inward. Then, it turned into something else. She started listening, really listening to the adults around her. Meetings, briefings, whispered conversations behind half-closed doors. Who approved the security changes? Who signed off on the dismissal? Who decided what speeches she gave? What questions she was allowed to answer? She traced names in her journal, circled departments, drew arrows and question marks, because if they could erase Eliza, what else could they do? And who else would they silence? It was then she remembered something Eliza once told her. When you're scared, speak low and steady. People only listen when you don't sound like you're begging. And so Charlotte began to speak. Low, steady, quiet, but intentional. During rehearsals, she started asking to rewrite her speeches. Just a sentence here, a question there. At first, they ignored her. Then they tried to redirect her. But she persisted. Why can't I say thank you in Welsh? Why do we never talk about the gardeners who work here? Why can't I mention Eliza? The questions were small, the pressure subtle, but it was there. A slow push against the walls that had always confined her. Voiceover. She wasn't just performing anymore. She was watching. And in watching, she began to understand that palaces were built not just of stone, but of silence. That obedience was expected not just from staff, but from her. That kindness, if too visible, was a threat to power, but Charlotte had seen kindness in its purest form, not in titles, not in ceremony. In a steady hand, a quiet shield, and a woman who stepped into danger without hesitation. And she wasn't going to forget that. She started pushing back, strategically, intelligently. At a school function, she insisted on introducing the custodial staff by name. At a charity event, she quoted a poem Eliza once read to her. No one noticed the reference, but she did. During a live appearance, she changed a scripted line mid-sentence, a subtle nod to something unsanctioned, a memory only she understood. Voiceover. The girl once taught to wave and smile had learned to watch and move. She wasn't just a child with perfect posture and a diamond-studded future. She was becoming something else. A girl who knew what power looked like and what it cost. Charlotte had lost her protector, but in that loss, she found her fire, and slowly, quietly, the palace began to shift, not because of scandal, not because of rebellion, but because one girl started asking the kind of questions they were afraid to answer. Not just where did Eliza go, but why did you send her away? And what are you so afraid of me becoming? She takes a breath, slow and steady, just like Eliza taught her, and begins. Today, I was asked to speak about leadership, about how young people can shape the world. Her voice is calm, measured, but there's something different, a warmth, an authenticity, and within seconds, the room leans in. But before I speak about the future, I want to thank the ones who taught me to see it clearly, the quiet ones. The ones who stand in the shadows so others can shine. Gasps ripple through the hall. Her mother shifts in her seat. A senior aide lowers their head, whispering frantically into a phone. But Charlotte keeps going. She never asked for applause, never stood in the spotlight, but she walked beside me when no one else did. She reminded me that kindness is stronger than fear, that being brave doesn't always mean being loud. She never says her name, but she doesn't have to. Some heroes don't wear medals, they wear silence. But I see them, I remember. A long pause, a look straight into the cameras, and I hope we all learn to remember those who guard not just our lives, but our hearts. She closes the speech, bows her head, and steps back. Voiceover. There's a beat of silence, then thunderous applause. The official palace live stream cuts the feed. Within seconds, but it's too late. Someone in the third row filmed the whole thing. Within an hour, the video is everywhere. #The Quiet Ones trends globally. Clips surface across TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Charlotte's face lit softly by stage lights, her voice shaking with truth. Some call it rebellious, others call it revolutionary, but most, they just call it real. Voiceover. People want to know Who is she talking about? Speculation explodes. News anchors dissect her words. Body language experts weigh in, and behind the palace gates, a storm brews, internal memos fly. Damage control begins. An official spokesperson releases a statement. The princess's speech was heartfelt and personal. No further comment. But the message is clear to the public, to the press, to the palace itself. Charlotte isn't just a poised girl in a tiara anymore. She's a young woman with a voice, and she's not afraid to use it. The little girl who once clung to a silent shadow has stepped into her own light, and she did it not by shouting, not by scandal, but by remembering. She knows the difference now between being watched and being seen, between being protected and being controlled. And she understands what happens when loyalty becomes inconvenient. It gets erased, covered in protocol, filed under security reassignment. No press, no closure, just silence. Cut to Charlotte. At her desk, a single lamp casts warm light. She writes carefully, folding a final letter. We never see the words. She tucks it into the showbox, now nearly full. She closes the lid and locks it. A goodbye maybe, or maybe just a promise, because in the end, there are some names you don't need to say out loud, some loves you carry, without ever speaking of them again. Voiceover. What does it mean to grow up in silence? To smile while grieving, to curtsy while questioning, to be praised for obedience. While your heart aches to rebel, Charlotte has learned what most never do until much later, that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a hand on your shoulder when the cameras are off. Sometimes it's someone stepping into danger so you don't have to. Sometimes it's the shadow who disappears not because she failed you, but because she cared too much. We see Charlotte at the window. Rain slides down the glass. She looks out at the world she's expected to rule one day. Gray, vast, expectant. Voiceover. Can love be a form of resistance? Can remembering someone the world forgot be a revolution in itself? And what if the future queen has already learned how to lead, not from a crown, not from a throne, but from a woman with no title, who chose her? Charlotte steps back from the window. Her face is calm, composed. The fire still burns behind her eyes. She turns and walks away, not with sadness, not with anger, but with purpose, because maybe the little girl who once needed protection has become the young woman who will protect others. And maybe, just maybe, the next time the world watches her, they won't be looking at a princess. They'll be looking at a leader. Fade to black. Soft echo of Charlotte's words from her speech. I remember.